Hi,
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
All right, my friends, it's time once again to get our talk on. It's Morning Talk with me, your host, J.C. McCauley, along with the champions of talk. And, of course, this morning, talk champion Cleo Duke-Wright is in the house. Good morning, Miss Cleo. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing very good. How was your week? You had a good week?
Yeah, I did have a good week. Yes, I did.
Mm-hmm. Now, for the most part, it was... uneventful, I trust. You know, nothing disastrous or anything happened.
No, nothing disastrous. I met the needs. I met the needs of everyone that I needed to meet.
Everyone that's depending on you.
Yes, I met every need. And guess what?
What's that?
They still weren't satisfied. Is anybody surprised? They still, that was that one day I had to just scream, but I said, why are you screaming? Who's listening? Nobody's listening to you and nobody cares. So just shut up. So I just shut up.
The more you give, the more they come back. Sort of like a supermarket, They know where they can go to get what they need, and what they need is in you.
One day I said, now listen, I got everything they need and some of what they wanted. They can't possibly want anything else. I'm tired of coming home from work. Oh, I get up, I give everybody what they wanted, what they needed, everything and all that stuff. And and the next thing that comes out of someone's mouth was, did you bring this? I need this, and I need that, and not even before they even could thank you for what you just did. And so I said to myself, I'm just going to bed. I'm tired. I'm going to bed. I am not listening to this nonsense. This is crazy. Why do I put myself through this? You want their thanks. Maybe you even want their praise. I don't know what you want, but you gotta know you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it. So what are you gonna do for yourself now? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do for you? Mm-hmm. So I said, I'm gonna do what I promised myself I was gonna do. I'm going to get my story ready for Friday. I'm gonna call the ladies for the committee. I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna go out on Friday, like I said I was gonna do last week. And didn't do, and I'm going to write down all my appointments. And so my calendar is full, almost full for the whole month of October. And there's some that I probably haven't gotten down there. If you don't carry that book with you everywhere.
Now, when you say book, you're talking about your calendar?
My calendar. You forget things. There's so much to do that you forget things. So this week I carried that calendar everywhere I went. I left it in the car, and then I had to take it upstairs because you get a telephone call and there's another meeting or another something. So October is full, almost full, and I missed some deadlines, but it will just have to do. It will just have to do. But I was very proud of myself that I started to get kind of organized, and you could see it in your head. When you could see what you're going to do in your head, and it comes bam, 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 you got to do this, this, and it's so much more relaxing than say, oh, I got all this to do, and I don't quite know what to do, and it's all jumbled in your head, and so you get kind of nervous and jittery. But I'm kind of relaxed now because I know.
So you do the old school calendar?
Yeah, I have to because I put things in my phone and then I can't find them. And I know I put it here, but when I go look, I can't find it. So I must have did something else. So I do have a calendar, and I have, I'm going to get that calendar for my passwords. And I don't know how many times I've lost that password for my iPad. I put it there, and I immediately
for access to the iPad.
Not the access to the iPad, but you have the access, and then you have when you want to do something or buy something, you have to use your password.
Oh, okay.
And I constantly forget what that is, and I put it in my phone somewhere, and I put it on paper somewhere. So I decided, I saw this little book in CVS. It was just for that, and I said, I'm gonna get that book. And I couldn't get it then because that I stopped doing that on the moment thing. I said, all right, think it over first. Decide whether you really need it. And then after I decided to get it, I said, what if I lose it? What if someone takes it? But it's still better for me to have it on paper. And in the phone. I'll put it in the phone too, but I got to put it on paper because that's how I live. I put everything on paper.
Yeah, I live by my calendar. I have my calendar, and then my clock, which is slightly above you. So I live by that clock, literally, because of course I'm in my office for most of the day.
And you could just as soon live by the clock on your phone.
Well, I have to take the phone out of my pocket to see it. See, the clock is right. It's right there, and I have there's plenty of screens around here, and each screen has a clock on it, but it's not the same as looking at. And that clock, of course, has a sweet second hand.
Yes.
And it's 5 minutes fast, and I know exactly how much time I have before I have to do the next thing. And then, of course, my calendar is on my phone. I use Google Calendar. I'm not one of those people who's afraid of letting Google know everything I do.
I like my calendar on my phone. It's just it's a nuisance to me. I'd rather flip the page and see what it is and go about my business.
But most people take their phones with them. Calendars. So is this a pocket calendar? Is it a big calendar? Is it a purse-size calendar? Or
the calendar that I have now is much too heavy. It's as heavy as this book and bigger. And I carry it. It's in my car, and sometimes I leave it at home. But the next calendar I get is lighter. This calendar has everything in it, but I don't need everything.
I used to have a calendar. I've had big ones. I've had smaller ones. But as long as I can remember, I lived by what was in the calendar. Your appointments, your phone numbers were in there. Remember when you used to write the phone numbers in the back of the phone? And that's
what I will be doing now, because you can remember more if you see it all the time. And there's some people's numbers you should just have. My sister's number, she's had it for 50 years or so. So I know her number. I've always known her number, but there are people that you should know their number and you don't. But several years ago, before the phone got so popular, you knew your friend's number. You just dialed it. But now you don't. You say, what's so-and-so's number? Oh, let me look in my phone.
I remember my phone number from when I was a kid, because you had to know your address and your phone number. And I used to remember folks' phone. I know my wife's phone number. But everyone else, name. The name is in the phone. So if you look up their name, you click the button and it dials. But phone numbers, If I had to remember, I don't know most people's phone number.
I know my girlfriend's phone number that we raised our children together, and so I remember her phone number. She's had the same phone number since my children were little. My brother's had the same phone number for many years. His house phone, I don't know his
Cell phone.
His cell phone. But of course, I had so many numbers. I never kept the same anything. But they always had the same number, so I still remember those few numbers. But it really bothers me that I have to look up everything. That really bothers me. Where several years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to look up everything.
It could be less a matter. Or do you think you're forgetting stuff?
Oh, I'm definitely forgetting stuff.
Well, maybe it's just that you have more to know now. It's like a sponge, and of course, the human brain will hold a whole lot. You'll never know as much as the brain can remember, but maybe like a sponge, a fool can't hold no more. He's gonna write stuff down.
Well, that's why you have your little handy book or your book. There's a space for notes. So when you're talking to someone, you jot down a few notes. When you say to someone you're just meeting them, oh, give me your number, I'll give you a call, blah, 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 blah. You write down their name, you write down their number, then you look at their number. Maybe a mother so there, who is this? Why did I write this number down? Blah, blah, blah. Because you didn't put a note in of who they were. And you have all these names and you have all these numbers, but some of them you just can't remember who they are.
Well, I have always had a hard time remembering people's names, so I generally don't call them by their name. Just strike up the conversation. But I'm trying to make an effort now of remembering the name. So I won't press on until I get the name. So I really try to, because I've never been good with names.
Well, you're like myself, Stan. I have never been good with names either. And sometimes I get really embarrassed, especially when someone says,
"You don't even know my name." Do you remember my name? You don't remember? You don't know my name.
and then they say, "I'm your next door neighbor."
Oh, you don't recognize or know the name.
I might see them every once in a while, but I'm trying to be more in the present. So when I say hello to you and hi, I really want to say hello to you and hi. Not just hi, how are you? And as soon as you're past me, you're gone in my mind. I want to be present, So I'm trying to do that more now. To be present, because it seems that I am present to more people than are present to me. Hi, Cleo, and I'm looking at the person. I said, "Oh my God, who's this person? Who is this?" Now I know I've worked with and helped hundreds of people, been part of their lives, but I like to remember people. I like to have that same kind of joy when they say hi, Cleo. I want to have that. I want to have that back.
What's interesting, you've been in the lives of so many people and have helped so many people that when people see you, they're genuinely glad to see you, and they haven't seen you for a while,
right?
And likewise, you haven't seen them, but you help them, so their excitement and joy of seeing you is a little different, and in that you help so many people. Sometimes it's hard to focus in and remember, but they see you, and that's Cleo.
That's Cleo.
Hey, Cleo, do you remember me?
Oh, that just hurts my heart. That's really.
Do you remember me? And I don't think they mean it in the way like, oh, you don't even remember who I am. But you touched their lives in such a way that it's meaningful. And so, while I'm sure you're happy to see him, but the experience that you had with them is different than the experience they had with you. Like when we were up on the plaza, it was a Taste of Hartford, and we were out there. The African American Alliance had a table out there, and Cleo was there, and several other members, and we were just sitting out there meeting and greeting people. It was really nice up there.
It was.
I mean, it was beautiful weather, nice aromas of food and the music. But nonetheless, a guy came by and he was stopped. This woman saved my life. He literally was just about in tears seeing you. Then you were gone. You went to put money in the meter.
Yes.
He came back around. You weren't there. He touched the ground in your honor. I mean, he was like, you touched his life. So whether you remember him or not, you did, but whether you remember him or not is not as important to him as him acknowledging how special you were. And so,
Yes.
Yeah.
But I like to remember people. Sometimes a lot of times I remember their faces, or when someone comes running and just opens their arms to grab me and to hug me, I open my arms and hug him too. I mean, I don't know. I might not remember him or recognize him, but I guess he wants to hug me, so I hug him. People said, "Why do you hug him? He's dirty or he's this." When somebody wants you to hug them, that's a very important thing.
Yeah, they need a hug.
They need a hug.
To connect with a human being.
Say that again?
To connect with a
yes.
human being.
Yes, to connect with the human being.
To give you a sense you're not alone. I think that's probably the worst feeling a human being can have, is to be alone. Nobody, just to be alone. And you don't want to be alone. Now, hug says you're not alone. That you matter.
You matter. And that's what a hug is.
Mm-hmm.
You matter. You matter to me.
Mm-hmm.
I matter to you. You matter to me. Miss Cleo. Sometimes they don't even speak English. Miss Cleo. So you give up. Someone holds out their arms. You give them a hug.
Yeah.
Even in the pandemic, you give them a hug.
Especially in the pandemic.
Yes.
Especially, and I'll see, of course, people say, well, I ain't telling people to hug people in the pandemic. You get sick. Well, my goodness. It got to a place where people don't, they look at you with the side eye because they don't trust you because you might be sick. You might be contagious. So there's this real separation, distance. Of course, unfortunately, mental health has become very, very, it's become present. There's always been some mental health issues, particularly in the country. And I guess the pandemic pushed the issue of mental health to the forefront. But suicides went up dramatically during the pandemic because people they're being distant and separated. And people
alone, and that's
alone. The loneliness is just stifling them. And if you ultimately, to be that alone, you get the feeling, well, why am I here? Why am I alive? I mean, it's a horrible place to be for folks.
That is true.
And so, they stay together apart. All these little phrases they had. Some of the TV stations had these moment of calm. So you see a serene lake There's nothing out there, no people out there. It's just calm. Well, you want to be around people, because people do need people, even people who are.
Do you think people realize that more now, since the pandemic, than they did before? That's a necessary thing for people to be around people.
I think people do realize it. They may not be able to articulate it or express it like they would like to, because sometimes people don't know how to express the need. People need lots of things, but one thing people seem to have a hard time expressing is the need for companionship, or to be acknowledged. One of the words I hate, to be validated in some way, but that is something that people do need. Absolutely,
they absolutely do need to be validated. Just like someone would say, "But you never talk to me. You never say anything to me." And I'm saying, well, I talk to everyone. I come in here and say hi, and I talk to everyone. But they were saying to me, "But you never talk to me." So instinctively, I knew that was important.
Mm-hmm.
That was important. So every day after that, whoever said that to me, and it happened a couple of times throughout the years, I would make sure I said, "Hi, how you doing?"
Mm-hmm.
Never failed. That person became closer to me than the people that I knew for years. That person kind of came in and wiggled their way. I don't know how to say it, but became one of my companions during my work, and learned about them, and then they would disappear. Then after a while, everyone disappears and goes on their own life, and leaves me by myself, not quite by myself, but without their companionship that you get used to. They go their way. Hopefully you did something.
Well, when you're when you're in service to other people, whether it's in ministry, like clerical ministry, or I should say clergy ministry, not clerical, or some service, like you teach, firefighter, police officer, if you're in retail, sales, any kind of work that interfaces with people where you're the giver. Particularly if it's a long-term type thing, like the work of ministry as a clergy person or somebody involved in church or in a religious order. Your relationship with people is one that you stay connected for an extended period of time. Teachers, particularly if you're in a school setting, it's not as common today as it used to be. But once upon a time, schools went from 12th grade all the way up to from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade, or kindergarten up to the 8th grade.
Our school, Northwest Jones, went from kindergarten to the 8th grade. Then you went to Weaver for the 4 years. But 8th graders and kindergartners were
all in one building.
They were basically in one building. They didn't see each other all day.
Right, but the teachers would know you.
The teachers, oh yeah,
teachers would know you. And so when you leave the building, the teacher, it's like they're losing one of their kids. They're sending them away, Yes. So that sense. And then you see your teacher like years later, "Oh, Mrs. Lemkin," it's like, yes. You're excited. They're trying to remember you. They kind of do. You're one of my students, aren't you? Actually, you know what? Teachers do kind of remember you. They actually do. My teachers,
the ones that I had, remembered me when I was an adult. I remember every last one of my teachers every last one of my teachers from kindergarten through the 8th grade or through 6th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Junior high school, I know some of them. High school, I may remember a few, but from kindergarten to the 6th grade, every teacher.
I don't remember most of my teachers. I remember the standout teachers, the teachers that had kind of like personalities. I remember them. But the teacher pours a lot into you, sees you come and go, sees you grow, sees you mature.
Yes.
And they're constantly giving to the student. The student just in class and can't wait to get out and go on about their business. So, the same thing I would say for if you're in service to other people, and they're grateful and happy to receive what you have, but that ultimately you're a utility, but not in a bad sense. But they're not processing it like they owe you their life, unless of course you saved their life.
Oh, the
like firefighters.
Yes. And black teachers followed black students all the way through school and high school. Mrs. And that's her name just dropped out of my head. I forgot, but anyway, I'll remember her name.
Mm-hmm.
Ellen, Mrs. Ellen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure most people in Harvard, my age, and know Miss Ellen. She was the first teacher of color that I ever saw in my life, because there were no teachers of color at Northwest Jones School.
Mm-hmm.
She followed Ines, Phillip, and I all the way through our lives, and she always knew us, and she always knew about our lives, our whole life. She never and Mrs. Strong was the other teacher that I knew that all the way through our lives. They were very important. And Mrs. Strong was in the neighborhood, right off of Tower Avenue.
Well, see, that's a big difference. If the teacher is in the neighborhood, so much has changed. And I think a lot of people either want to believe or embrace the idea or the notion that it's for the better. But sometimes things are working just fine. They don't need to be fixed because they're not broken.
Right.
And so, now the teachers aren't, it's not the same because there's no real connection. So if the teacher knew you and how you, that means they were following you. They really cared about you. And they look at you as someone who they helped to develop. They had the privilege, the honor, and the opportunity to help participate in you becoming the human being and the person of character that you are today, along with your parents and other people in the community. And they took pride in you, and they were disappointed if you weren't doing well. And sometimes they would come and see you if you weren't doing well. Now it's just a job. It's just a hireling. Folk are more concerned about how much money they're going to make in their contract than they are whether or not you develop. And that's so where things get so bad, because people chasing after money as though the compensation in cash is actually important. And all you do is use it to get something else. There's other ways to get those same things besides.
And that's that's not only with teachers, that's also with social workers.
With everything.
It's the money.
Right. And unfortunately, a lot of cleurgy.
Yes. A lot of clergy.
It's come down to, so they're not caring about your spiritual growth and your needs. You're caring about how much money.
And someone told me the other day that this minister told his congregation they could not go to another church. They could not, or something would happen. I can't quite remember. It was so ridiculous that I can't remember. But I mean, he held his congregation hostage. if they didn't think. The mind is so important. You don't give it away to somebody else. Keep your mind. Keep your mind. Know yourself and keep your own mind. You know, just like my son was saying the other day. Oh, you don't have to think about it. What do they say when they can't find the answer? I said, I don't know. What do they say? Google it.
Google it, yeah.
Google it, he says. So you don't have to know it. You just Google it. And he said, oh, my God. He was telling me how rich, how much money Google must have. I mean, because billion trillionaires, because everyone says, just Google it. When we used to have encyclopedias, dictionaries in our homes that, you know, we just looked up things. I love looking up things. I love looking up things. And
well, you can still go to the library.
yeah, well, I have all those books in my house. And I still look up things.
But nothing. Now, some things do improve over time, and access to information through something that you can hold in your hand is quite powerful.
Yes.
Because you know, you can Google your way through auto repair,
Yes.
painting, plumbing. You know, now don't get crazy thinking because you can look up a little bit of plumbing stuff, you become the plumber. but you could do an awful lot of stuff by just going and looking online.
That repair book, that big yellow repair book.
How to repair your sink.
How do you prepare anything?
Yeah.
It was a big yellow. There was two of them, a yellow one and a purple one. But they told you how to repair anything. And I had them in my house, you know.
Yeah. General repairs.
And I haven't seen one of those books lately, but
we don't need them anymore because you've got your phone and there's videos. I think Google is a very powerful way to search up stuff and access to information. But you know, encyclopedias used to be the rage if you could afford a good set. But the encyclopedia just was inherently old knowledge. You know, when it comes off the press, it's shipped to your house, it's already old. I mean, of course, unless the ancient stuff remains ancient.
You get a new book every year.
Update.
Yeah, what was that? World Encyclopedia.
World Book. I want to say World Book. The
Well,
World Book, Encyclopedia Britannica, and I think World Book.
We had, my father
Was blue, wasn't it?
Yes, it was blue.
Yeah, I think that was World Book.
My father, he didn't read. He couldn't read very well. Didn't go to school that long. But he was in love with books, just like me. We had the encyclopedias. We got a new one every year. I had the children's dictionary, the young person's dictionary, till I was grown and running a bookstore. I still had that thing. And we had dictionaries and we had paper, pencils, all of that stuff, always. And kids used to come to our house and say, my mother said, do you have a dictionary? And we would say, you don't have a dictionary? How would you not have a dictionary? But people would come to our house and ask us, could they borrow a dictionary? Yeah. They didn't have a dictionary. And of course we had those Bible stories, all of the blue Bible books. Did you have those when you were a kid? There was about 12 of them, or there was a whole set of them of Bible stories with beautiful, beautiful pictures in them that my parents also got. And we just looked through and looked through and looked through.
Well, we've come a long way in terms of information, accessing it, and you know, who has access to information. Once upon a time, only the elite had access to certain information because you had to be in the right circles and get the right places and have access to the right books. But now anyone can get access to almost any information just with a request. So if you know the right question, you can find the answer.
That's right.
Even on where people live.
I looked
and
up
who's
someone.
who?
Yes, and
I
they
mean,
give you
know,
the person.
everything is out there.
Yep. They give you the person's address, their telephone number, all this other stuff about them, where they work, with blah 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 blah. I said, "Oh my goodness," because I looked up my friend. I didn't have her number. I looked up her friend. They told me all this information about her. Oh my goodness. I'm not gonna look up myself. I said, "No, don't look up yourself, Cleo."
I remember when Google was first making its. I mean, everything is Google now, but I remember when Google was first coming on the scene, and John Motley used to do, he's like the world's greatest MC, and he be at an event, and it was like this kind of like running thing that he used to always do. He says, we have so and so here is with us. I Googled him to see what I could learn about him. And then he would kind of slow down, trail off, and look at the audience. He'd look over at the person. He'd say, Did you take any time to Google me? It was funny. The importance of the person that needs to be Googled. But, yeah, man, your information is out there. It's out there. So, everybody's information is out there.
So why are we trying to hide this and that? And
right.
When it's already... it's already there. Even your social security number. If somebody really wanted to find your social security number, they could find your social
It's not that difficult to find.
It's not that difficult to do.
You would hope that it was, but it isn't. Mm-mm. Yeah, my dad is like that. He doesn't want to do stuff online because he doesn't want them to have his information. Dad.
They already have it.
They already have it. He's funny because he used to, we grew up, in rural Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia, and we had. My dad was like, make sure the doors are locked. Always locked. The doors were always locked. Windows locked. And my sister and I used to joke with him because in the living room we had this huge window, window panes. Window had to be no less than 20 feet long and maybe 6 feet high. All window pane. And we used to joke, you could come up here and just push this thing in. I mean, you could just sheer force and push the wall in, and you'd have access to the living room. And we're so far off the road as if everybody in the house was screaming, no one would hear us. So, if somebody wants to get in here,
they're going
to get in, and we'll all be dead. So what's all this, consternation about? We got to be safe. You're up off the road in the dark where no one can hear you. But, he doesn't like anything online. He doesn't like, but online is where you have to be. Now, I entered into the wonderful world of Social Security. A lot of my, I have one viewer in particular says, you better go get your money. Go get your money. Because I could actually file for Social Security. And it occurred to me, I don't know why I've been putting this off. It's like the great unknown. It's like this threshold you cross over. Once you cross over it, you can't turn back.
How old are you?
I'm 60. I'll be 63 in January.
Well, I say unless you need it, don't do it. Because then every cent you make, they counted it, and if you're 2 cents over, they're gonna take your money for that month until you reach an age of. You probably have to be 68.
It's 67.
67.
67 for full retirement. There's different, depending upon who you talk to, you get different advice. But the fact of the matter is, the money is yours. It's not a gift from the government. It's a true entitlement, which means you actually are entitled. Most of what people call entitlements aren't entitlements at all. It's something they feel they're entitled to, but it's your money. Mm-hmm. You put the money in there, and your employer matched what you put in there for the most part. And so that was part of your salary. It's your money. It's not like the government giving you a loan or, giving you some sort of help you out money. It's your money.
You seem to feel that way, that they're giving you something that out of the goodness of their heart.
They're not right.
And, and it's not so, but it appears that way.
Because the check, they're the stewards of the money, but the money is your money, and they've been borrowing your money. The money is yours. You contributed that money. And if you're working now and if you're older and you're working, you're still contributing.
I'm still contributing
to the fund.
But my Social Security is never going to go up.
No, it won't go up depending upon when you start to collect it.
Yes, and I said,
it'll be the same forever.
Yes, I said, but you won't catch me. Those full retirement people will not catch me because I took it early. I took it when I could, but I paid the penalty for taking it early because I have never stopped working. Actually, full time I stopped, but I never really stopped. So there would be months when they send me a letter saying you won't get your check this month and you blah 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 blah, and maybe not next month. So I would have to. One time I called them. I said, "Are you crazy? You better send me that money because I got to pay my rent." And they said, "Well, this and that." And I said, "Send me my money." Mm-hmm. I kept saying that. They did send money. They did something. I don't know what they did to get their money to penalize me, but they did something. But I did pay my rent that month. But I had to really perform because they don't give your money to you very easily.
It's like going to the bank. How much money would you like to withdraw, Mr. McCauley? Well, I don't need that much. Maybe $20. Do you really need the $20? What do you mean? Do I really need? It's my money. Give me my money. I want my $20.
When is the public gonna realize that they're actually the boss?
It's gonna be a long. I think that
we are the boss.
I think that's hopeless. I think it's hopeless. Most people. I think it's gone.
Throughout the centuries, it's been the same way.
Yeah.
We give our power
away
to others.
Yes.
And then they deal it out to us as they please. Mm-hmm. Give us what they please when actually the whole damn thing's ours.
Mm-hmm. Yes. In this country, absolutely.
And we do that willingly.
Yes.
We do that willingly. We elect people and then we think that they're the boss.
Right.
And how you please me to be in my presence. Oh. And how you please how I'm so glad you came and blah blah blah. Shake you, pat you on the head. Oh God, if anyone ever patted me on the head, boy, would they get it. Pat you on the shoulder.
Won't get their hand back.
Oh, yeah. Or pat you on the shoulder. Because, how many times have they done that? Have anybody done that, in a position, talk to you, and they're talking to you, but in some way that they are talking down to you, and you do not appreciate it, but how do you deal with that? And you just smile back and look at them. But how do you, my sister would be extremely forward and very rude to the person. Mm-hmm. I could never see myself doing that because some people do that out of a way that they were brought up, they were taught. Mm-hmm. They're not really doing it. They were taught to talk down to you. They were taught to treat you like this. And when you come at them negatively, they don't even know what to do, and they don't even know why you're doing it. And they just, just freeze. And I hate to see that too. I hate to have someone just take it, unless they're doing it on purpose, But a lot of people, most people, I think, don't do that on purpose. They do what they were taught to do, and you have to teach them different. but I don't think you have to blow them away. I don't like to blow people away unless I'm extremely, extremely angry.
Well, you're taking into consideration the other individual, like, and so
I've had friends who were racist to the bone, and they would be my friend, and they would think I could not see that they were racist.
Well, they may not see that they are racists.
So right, there's no.
So since they don't see themselves as being racist, well, without going into a deep dive of what is racism, but they don't see themselves as being racist. So why would they think that you think that they're racists? I mean, you can see it because you have frames of reference that they don't possess. They would like to see it, but they don't. And so, to me, it's just another a personality trait like any other. Some people are. I know a guy many years ago who had two wives.
He was an American-born person.
Oh, very American-born. He had two wives. They lived in two different cities, and they had two families, and they knew nothing of each other.
I hope he was caught.
I have no idea whether he was caught, but I don't know. I have no idea whether or not they found out about this, but he was definitely caught. Not by them, but he was caught in this, I don't want to say trap, but he had created this two separate. They lived in separate cities. Where he worked was such that it was far enough away that he would go to work and then come home, so to speak. So the travel was so much that he would say, "Well, look, I'm going to spend the week in town." And I'd come home on the weekend. So he would switch back and forth. So he had an out, if you will. But he was one of the nicest people you'd ever want to know. Apart from that little quirk in his personality. And then so all kinds of people have personality quirks. It's just that, quote unquote, people who behave in a manner that is where they think of themselves as being superior to everyone else. And the superiority is manifest in skin tone. That is not socially acceptable. There's plenty of people that folk know who act superior. They just happen to be the same color. So it's not processed as racism. But it's definitely a superiority thing. Let the average person in a church go sit up on the rostrum. You'll find out what it is to be subjugated. Go sit up on the pulpit area. You're not allowed up there. You're just regular people. You don't get to drink. How many people who brings you bottles of water during church service? Or a little snack, a little apple juice with a little doily on top of it. No one treats the rest of the congregation like that. And if someone did that for you, who do you think you are? You're not in charge here. You're not the pastor.
I go
same attitude.
I go to church in Vernon,
Mm-hmm.
and that's because I could not find, I couldn't do it. I couldn't pastor worship. I couldn't do that. I couldn't look at the pulpit as a place for only the pastor could stand on, and
the anointed and appointed,
and that right. I couldn't, and that hey, he's your pastor. God put him there, so you can question nothing. Just do what he says. you can't question anything because God. But I'm not talking about kind of. I'm talking about, say, if I was a pastor coming in and I was under you,
Mm-hmm.
and it's taught, in some of our lessons that you can. God put them there, and that's what you do. And your opinion.
You don't have an opinion.
No, you don't. And
I'll tell you what your opinion is.
now, if you have a wedding, if you ask to do a wedding, you have to ask permission. If someone asks you to do a funeral, you have to ask permission. You just can't say, Pastor, on such and such a day, Mrs. So-and-so has asked me to do, I'll be doing a funeral. But you can't do that. You just have to, and they may say, no, you can't do that.
Now you're talking about an individual within the congregation who has grown to a place that they have their own personal ministry. They operating within the construct of that church. They going to the pastor, say, Pastor, I've been asked to perform a wedding.
Yeah.
Okay. That is that's going to be a touchy issue in most places because you are seen as stepping outside of the acceptable norms and rules
of
the church, of the organization, as opposed to the organism, the organizational structure of the body has rules that everybody buys into. The congregation buys into their role. They're like these different lanes that everyone understands are there. And so they fit into them. And if someone steps out of line, the rest of the folk will put you in check.
Right. That's why I couldn't. If it had nothing to do with the church that I was with,
Mm-hmm.
but had something to do with somebody wanting you to do a funeral, you couldn't just go do it for them, even though it didn't have anything to do with.
Now,
where
when
you
you
were.
when you say funeral, you're just talking about the sermon portion of the funeral, or all that's involved, with paperwork and all that kind of stuff. Because generally, the lead clergy.
No, I'm not talking about paperwork.
All right, so you're just talking about maybe speaking.
Speaking, yes.
And doing that.
Yes. Because I don't know of
like weddings,
weddings.
Weddings are more people are asked to do weddings than funerals.
Than to do funerals.
Right.
But if you're non-denominational and they're unchurched, I never understood it. I said, why? Why can't I go do this funeral? They didn't tell me I couldn't do it. No one ever told me I couldn't do the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
No, they never told me. They said, go.
Yeah, I think
no one ever
I
told
think
me that,
in it all, oftentimes we forget the people are involved. We sometimes elevate people to a status of title as opposed to the role in which they are serving. So they become, quote unquote, the pastor, the doctor, the police officer, the teacher, the superintendent, the mayor, the governor, whatever. But they're people. They're people first, serving in a role. They weren't born into the role.
Right.
And while they may die in the role, there will come a time when generally they're not doing that anymore. And they just become regular people again. It's like somebody on a star in stage. They were a big time star in Hollywood or in Broadway. And then, 10 years later, where are they? They're no longer in that role. Right. So we put on them these roles. So as the pastor, he's got to be better than us. He's the pastor. God put him there. He's divine. He walks on water. He never touches wine. He doesn't do anything wrong. He doesn't curse. He doesn't pass gas. He doesn't even go to the bathroom. he's beyond reproach. Where he walks, holiness shines. Holiness just spills off of him. He's a knucklehead person just like you. He's just in a different role. And hopefully he behaves himself and conducts himself in a little bit better state. But before he became pastor, he might have been a pimp or a thief or a murderer. Paul out there murdering folk. Yeah, so, I only say that to say this. They're human beings, and we don't allow them to be human, and our expectations of them are not realistic.
But see, that was the big difference.
And they act like humans. You just don't see them. They do.
Recall our pastors, I was brought up Methodist, so our pastors sometimes need to be ministered to, and there was always somebody in the congregation who ministered to him. He wasn't out. He was the one that gave us the word, who came when there was a problem or trouble. But there were people in the congregation who did the same thing for him. He wasn't higher or lower. He was the person who gave us the word, and a human being who could make mistakes, and that's all I knew. And then I came into a different world where the minister was not like that, and it was very hard, still hard, for me to take in, because I came from a place that there was no, that I saw no pastor worship. He was he was Dick, or he was Harry, and people called him that. People called him, and it's not the young kid, but children may call him Pastor Harry or Pastor, but they called him, the adults called him Harry, just like he called him Joe.
Right.
You're not going into a black church and do that.
Well, some black churches, they're not. There's no monolith. The majority of black churches, as we understand the black church, no.
I have not seen that. Not that they should.
Right, and I don't know that it's necessarily pastor worship as it is high regard and respect.
Do you think that?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of the Catholic church is like that.
Yeah,
and then I wouldn't say them as a white church, but I mean, there's plenty of white churches just like the black church. And given the historical context, where the only safe space that you had to look at leadership in a way that was not a threat to the oppressive society that had control over the people was the clergy, black clergy,
right.
and where you could have freedom to have financial things. So a lot of things have contributed to that. But generally speaking, most ministers are people of good character and decent people, so that when one goes south, it's a horrific and tragic event. It's like a super betrayal, so but all of that comes as a result of people ceding power to leadership that they ought not be. Give honor to whom honor is due, but at the same time, to whom much is given, much is required. And there's a plenty of warnings about hirelings and wolves in sheep's clothing. But if you're not aware of that and sticking head in the sand, then people are going to be exploited and taken advantage of, unfortunately.
I'm not saying, because I came into Harvard. I mean, when I ended my last service as Christian educator, and I wanted desperately to go to a black church. And so I'm not dissing the black church, because I love the people. I mean, in the black church, but I was uncomfortable and didn't know how to act. I'm not saying wrong or right. Didn't know how to act with the disciplines. I didn't know how to act.
Well, maybe you actually did know how to act. Something is out of sorts, and this is not correct. That was your reaction to it.
When I thought, like you're sitting down in the congregation and you're ready for the word, and a minister gets up, and this happens also in the white church, or in other churches, not just and you most obviously know that this man has not studied to give the word that he is giving. He's just ranting and raving and not giving the scriptures, and not giving. And so I would get so upset about that.
Well, that
I said, what is
many times as a result of the congregation being less educated than he is. You're not gonna get away with that in front of a congregation that has a broader understanding, particularly of the word. A lot of churches, scripturally speaking, aren't churches at all. It's just a social gathering. So if the word instructs you to search the scriptures daily to see if whether or not the things that are said are so, it presupposes that the person hearing the word has an understanding of what the word is and can try what they're hearing against something, not just taking it for some. So it would be like if I went to a doctor and the doctor was telling me all kinds of wrong things. I wouldn't know. What do I know about medicine, internal medicine? I don't know anything. So I would take the advice of the doctor because the doctor seems reasonable, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if I was a medical professional or a nurse or somebody, I'd be like, now hold up. That doesn't even begin to sound right. Well, what are you basing this information on? So what peer review has gone through with it? Show me some. You have an understanding of the language enough to try and test the validity of what you're hearing. But in a church where the people don't know, and the pastor sounds good,
he's supposed to be teaching them.
Yeah, but see, you have a broader understanding. So you couldn't be in that congregation because all you'd be doing is correcting the pastor. So
I'm just saying, how could you get up there like that and talk like that and not quote one scripture, not back up anything you're saying, and you're just talking up there?
Right, but I think, in my never to be humble opinion, and I could be very, very wrong, thus say it stand, not necessarily the truth, you're saying he shouldn't be. How can he? Easy. He gets up there and does it. The how is not difficult to process, but particularly because but you are taking away the fact that he is a human being. He acts just like, and he's perpetrating a fraud, or he may actually be called and believed. Now, no one in today's church circles, John the Baptist would have been kicked out of the church. What does this clown know? He's never gone to school. He's never studied anything. Who does he think he is? Out there eating locusts and honey. He's a crazy man. He does stink and everything else. And he's out there baptizing people in the church. Who does he think he is? He's going to find a Christ. So the heavy hitters came from Jerusalem and wanted to know, who do you think you are? I am one crying in the wilderness. Prepare. And he had followers. Disciples.
Yep.
And Jesus' disciples are getting a little bent out of shape because John's disciples had more than he did. So, because a person does not necessarily have the education and awareness of Scripture, doesn't automatically disqualify them.
No. But you have to be honest. You can't. What is babbling?
That falls upon the hearer. The hearer. The Scripture said, well, they will heap unto themselves teachers having itchy ears. It will tell them what they want to hear as opposed to what the word says. That is more on the congregation that sits there and allows that to go on than it is on he who's doing the false preaching or the babbling. Now, he has a role to play and he'll be held accountable, but the people who are sitting there listening either don't know as much as he does or they don't want any more from him than that. Some congregations want to hear you hoop and holler and preach about a chicken dinner. When I remember a time when we ain't had nothing but the hog. We eating feet, but God done brought us a long way. Well, now we no longer have to eat the feet. God done blessed us to eat high on the hog. Once upon a time, then we didn't have nothing, but God done brought us a long way. Can the church say amen? Well, some people are into that. And it makes them feel good. And it's an experience that they can relate to because they have more than they had before. Once upon a time, all they had was pig feet. But God brought them out of the muck, the mire, and the clay, and now they can eat ham. They didn't think we was good enough for ham. And they sing songs out of the struggle. So you have to put it in the proper context. And so it's not automatically...
So he knows what you're saying. He knows his congregation.
He knows his congregation, but hopefully he's ministering to a need. Now, I can fully wrap my head around the fact that he's a charlatan scumbag. But I'm not willing, nor am I at liberty to just discharge him as such, because I don't know. So, bring not, touch not my anointed. If he says he anointed a God, then I'm not the one to say otherwise. The God will sort that out in the end. Woe unto him if he hasn't got it together and doing the right thing, because that's not the position. You don't want to have to be in that position. So if you know better,
do better.
Do better. That's
yes, okay.
Yes. Right. And excellency of speech doesn't automatically qualify. Right. And knowing Scripture doesn't qualify.
No.
Because there's a whole lot of folk know Scripture inside and out. Next to Jesus is that the third.
Like
and right.
I told you, the young woman who ministered to Willie and I. Did I tell you that last week? She's on the street. She's been on there ever since I
don't think you told me this.
Oh, we were trying to get Willie into the building, and we're having a hard time. We closed the door. I mean, I got him in, and I knew I could get him up the stairs. And this person kept jiggling the door. And I opened the door, and she said, "Oh no, you don't get him up that stairs anymore. But we're gonna get him up the stairs." And she came into the hallway there, and she started quoting script. I mean, from her heart. I felt her talking from the bone, and she was quoting scripture. She had her hands up, and she was, oh my goodness! And I just looked at her. I've been looking at this girl for years. I was just looking at her, and she said, "The Lord knows what He's doing, and when the time comes, blah 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 blah." Oh my goodness, And so I'm looking at her, and then she had someone help us up the stairs, help Willie up the stairs. And the man who she got to help up the stairs, Willie kept saying, "Don't touch me, don't touch me." And a few days later, I realized why he was saying don't touch him. The man did help him up the stairs. It's because Willie said, "One day I punched him in the face." And I thought he was going to drop me down the stairs. He was going to let me fall down the stairs. But the man helped him up the stairs till he got his walker, and that young girl was just the preaching. Then she turned and she went out the door, just like I always saw her. Went up to a car, just doing whatever, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
This woman has children, and I'm saying, wow. And then I was reading some scripture, and it said about Peter. It said Peter denied Christ, but that didn't mean that he didn't love Christ and had the passion of Christ. He made that mistake, and that brought that girl back to me, that what she had said to me, and I just couldn't believe. I could not believe her words, or she made me feel very comfortable, and for the rest of my day, I was kind of calmed down. But then to see her out there, I just didn't worry about her, but it was just a different experience for me.
Mm-hmm.
She had the words. She didn't live the life, but she surely had the words. And she ministered to us. So what is that?
Well, the Bible talks about entertaining angels unaware. You have no idea who's who. I mean,
Yeah.
and so the Lord calls all kinds of people and uses them as he sees fit. And, so we walk by faith, not by sight. There's all kinds of, there's all kinds of things that people believe to be so and can back up with the word. And you get into arguments. Now, there's the one could apply that, women shouldn't be ministers. And so I've had more than a few conversations with men who will say, how can she get up in the pulpit and how can she preach the word? She knows better. That's not what the word says. So what other people think may not necessarily be how the person they're referring to is processing what they are saying the Lord is leading them to do. Better to be obedient to the call of God than to conform to the will of man. Because then you're going to be in a lot of trouble because you have to give an account. So
that is true.
Oftentimes it's just not the place for you or for me or for someone else to be.
So that even as a minister and being ordained, the confusion doesn't stop.
Well, we are always learning.
The learning, because I learned, just the learning. So sometimes you just get numb.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's time to be silent
mm-hmm.
and just listen and learn and wait. And just wait, because that experience that I had, looking at her and listening to her, nobody could tell me that lady was faking. Nobody could have told me that she wasn't speaking the word of God at that particular time.
Mm-hmm.
The words were in her mouth. The passion was in her whole being. And so you say, well, who are you? Well, I'm just talking to myself. Well, and I do have to say, well, Lord, when you gonna look? When you gonna use me like that?
He has used you like that. Countless.
I want that passion. I want that.
He's helped you countless. He's used you countless times that you probably don't even really realize.
I don't.
We have there's different ministries and different gifts of help and things like that. You helped thousands of people in the soup kitchen. You have no idea of the lives you've touched, saved, and changed because you're just doing as you're led to do.
Yes.
And that's ultimately real ministry in what God calls people to do. Now, some people have the role and responsibility of teaching, preaching, right? Some evangelize, some being apostles or a prophet, evangelists, teaching preachers, or teachers and, preachers. But to whom much is given, much is required. Now, those who stand in a pulpit and preach the word, you want to take on this, you want to take on the role of Secret Service protecting the president, and you're willing to take a bullet for him. If that's not what you're willing to do, you need to find another line of work. If you want to stand in the pulpit and preach the word, then there's a whole lot that comes with that. And
Yes.
it's incumbent upon you to make sure you're preaching the right word, scripturally speaking.
Not as
But-
easy as you think it was.
No.
Not easy at all.
Because
Very, very
people are hanging on the
Not
validity of the words you say.
Yes. Not easy.
And you have to give an account, not to them,
Mm-hmm.
but to the Lord. So people who don't take it seriously and just look at it as an opportunity for a tax write-off or this, that, and the third, they're going to be in for a rude awakening. If what they preach is true, then it leads one to question, why are they acting so out of order? If what they preach is true, like I used to ask the question of a friend of mine who used to always proclaim that the Hartford Police Department was one of the most corrupt police forces on the planet. He used to say this. I said, so then if they are as corrupt as you say they are, what prevents them from taking care of you? Since that's what you're suggesting.
What prevents them from?
Acting out in a corrupt way to silence your big mouth running around the city saying stuff.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
They start harassing you and your children. What do you expect from an entity that you say is that? If you really believe that, you may want to step a little bit differently. So, sometimes there's a disconnect from what people say and what they do.
Yes.
Now, there are people in this town who are connected in ways that people won't even articulate the relationship of them and entities that they are connected to. You never hear their names talked about. Their names aren't maligned. No one speaks ill of them in the news or in conversation because they understand who these people are. They believe that these people really are the people who some people say they are, so they keep their mouths shut. So when people really think something, they act accordingly. Now, so if you believe the word of God, if you're preaching the word of God and do so in a reckless manner that causes, people to go astray, then the chances are they probably aren't really believers of the word. They're users, they're manipulators of the word. Wolves in sheep's clothing. Charlatans. There's plenty of charlatans. And that's a horrible, horrible thing. That's a horrible place to be. Woe, woe, and double woe unto them. They have no idea. They have no idea. They don't even have enough sense to be scared, terrified. So, all you can say, bless their hearts. The wheat grows with the tare, right? The weeds and the wheat grow together.
Yes.
During the harvest is when you get the wheat. After you get the wheat, you burn the rest of the field. So, clergy folk out there playing.
But
It's not,
we standing out here,
mm-hmm.
I hear you quick, cannot judge him because we don't know.
You can't, right? Touch not
You
mine
can't.
anointed. I'm not. We're not in a
So
position
we're
to
not
judge.
in position to say. You could say I don't belong in this church, or I don't
Right,
belong
right.
here,
Right.
But you cannot beline him or
I
because
would
you
not.
do not know. I get that.
Yeah. Well, scriptures say not even the angels bring a railing accusation against Satan. Against, heaven. And if he ain't somebody who you could talk bad about, it is nobody. But they don't know. That is not within the realm of their role or responsibility. And, who are we to judge anybody? So we shouldn't be judging anyone. Judge not that thou be not judged, because everyone has a little junk in their trunk.
Yes.
And you start rooting through the trunk.
That's true.
Some people are just a little better than others at burying their hidden treasures.
Yes.
But you get that treasure chest and start opening it up. That's why some people shouldn't run for office. Because they will start looking. They start to looking and they'll dig stuff up as best they can. And, they're trying to destroy your character.
There was this, what's the name of that story? Where the man loves this bird. He loves this bird. His wife hates the bird. And he loves the bird. And he comes home from work and he sits and listens to the bird. And then one day, the bird was not there. And he says, "Where's my bird? Where's my bird?" And his wife says, "I threw out the bird," and she just carries on. So he goes looking for the bird, and the bird is a magic, bird, and gives him a choice. Do you want the big? And she had beautiful daughters, I can remember. And she says, "Do you want this chest, the little chest or the big chest?" And he says, "Oh, I'll take the small chest." And when he got it home and opened it, it was full of gold and riches you could not imagine. So of course, guess who goes out and tries to get the other ones? You fool! Of course, why didn't you get the big chest? So guess who goes out and tries to find the enchanted bird? And she finds the enchanted bird, and she gets the same choice. What do you want? The big chest or the little chest? I want the big chest. And so she takes this chest and she drags it and she drags it. She drags it. She can't wait to open it. And when she opens it, there's snakes and all kinds of horrible things coming out of this chest, because she was so greedy that the chest that she had was just horrible things in it. And the man was so humble and so kind. He just loved the bird, and they entertained him, and he got the beautiful gift because he was good. I don't know why they always make the wife terrible, but but the wife, she was a horrible person. And I actually do not remember the end of the story. But the man lived happily. I don't know if they devoured her or what happened. Now I got to look up that story again, because it's coming into my head. The good will always conquer.
Amen.
In the very end, the good will always conquer. And that angry person who wants everything, they're gonna lose.
Yes.
The cruel person is gonna lose, no matter what it looks like. It's gonna lose.
Yeah. Well, as the word says, God is not slack concerning his promises. People may think that things aren't going to turn out, but they will. And that's why you have to have faith and trust. It may seem like things are bad, but they're not out of control.
No.
And so I think one reason why so many people are so tried up and tested up and tightened up, and the head ain't right, this, that, and the third, men's hearts failing them from fear and all of this, is because they don't have a relationship or a connection to anything that has promise and value. Because if you do, then calm and peace abide. If what you put your faith in is rescuing, then you don't have to worry. You're in the freezing water. The ship is sinking. You hear people screaming, and you don't know how you're even alive because it's so cold. And there's that Coast Guard helicopter and the rescue diver in the water to get you, and you're at perfect peace now because you're safe. You're still right on the edge of death because you're eating that freezing water and stuff, and you've got some wounds, but here's safety and rescue at least. And so you're now comforted by the presence of these rescuers. You know, Jesus is that rescuer.
Get in the boat.
Get in the boat.
Oh no, I can't get in the boat because the Lord's coming for me.
Well, you got those people.
Get in the boat. I can't get in the boat because I know the Lord's coming for me. I have faith. Third time, get in the boat. You know that story, right?
Oh, yes.
And the third time, you still don't get in the boat. And then when you see your maker, you said, Lord, I had all this faith. Why did you save me? He says, well, I sent 3 boats to rescue you.
And you wouldn't get in.
And you wouldn't get in.
Well, Miss Cleo, our time together has come to an end.
Really?
Yeah. Zoom by.
Just as I was having fun.
Well, that's good. That's good because a lot of times Miss Cleo leaves here. She's like, "Oh my goodness, I don't know what this is." You beat my head down again. No, yeah, this was it was light and uplifting. Yeah, sometimes we go a little bit longer, but I have a meeting with one of our members. We have a meeting together with somebody downtown, so we're going over to Capital Community College. Me and Paul Willis.
Oh.
Yeah, so I got to be there at 10:30.
Oh. Well, I'm going to save my story. I had a story about fear, and I will save it till next week.
Well, we'll start off with that.
And we'll start off.
All right.
The story about fear.
All right, my friends. Well, our time together has come to an end. Sister Nunez, I took your advice and started the process. She knows what I'm talking about.
You started the process?
Yeah, I'm not going to let them take my money.
You're not going to let them take your money?
Right. She said, go get your money. Social Security.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So the advice of one of our viewers.
Yes, and I agree with her totally. Go get your money.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see how it works out. All right, my friends, you all have a great rest of your day. Do something nice for yourself and the ones you love. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
J. Stan McCauley, and I do business as Light Source Productions. I provide professional services in the area of strategic video communications. First, what we do is we help you craft your message using what I call the rule of the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. We do event documentation, content acquisition, full-scale productions, editing, and of course distribution through our social media television network. And with social media, video is more important now than it has ever been. Whether you're talking big business, small business, nonprofit, church, or just an individual. Let's say you plan you're planning an event, a wedding, whatever the case may be. But let's say a big event, but no video. You spent all this time, all these hours to put this event on, and maybe 100, 200 people attend the event. But more important than that is that thousands could attend by watching it on social media. But of course, you don't think about this until after the event is over. You can't afford not to capture it for social media. And despite what people think, I am affordable. Give me a call. Let's plan your next video project and share it with the world on my social media television network. I promise you that you will have the attention of one person, me.